Well, I'm sort of the intro to the intro. I know Peyton said a lot of questions about, how in the world Mount Olive Pickles wind up being our program today. And, we've had some strange programs throughout the years, and this may be a little bit different. I guess the last one, food oriented, might have been Tom Smith that brought the Texas Pig people in a while back, just a few years ago. But anyway, I wanted to kind of let you know how this came about. My wife and I eat a lot of pickles. I mean, honestly, we probably eat pickles 3 or 4 days a week and something. And we are Mount Olive pickle consumers. I mean, that's the only brand we eat. And typically, you go to the store and you get things and you're satisfied with them. But, 6 months ago or better, actually, this was back in September, so that's not too long, I wasn't far off. I went to the grocery store and I got some pickles and we got home with them. And, my wife opens the jar and as soon as she slices it, she said, "This isn't right." And, we tasted one and it was kind of soft and mushy. And, you're used to a real nice, crispy pickle when you get a dill pickle. And I'm not the complaining type, but I thought, well, they really need to know about this. So I looked on the jar and they had a satisfaction guarantee and went to the website, put in the info, and I thought, well, I'll never hear anything on this. In about a week, I get this letter. And it's just such a nicely written letter. They thank me for bringing it to their attention. They explain why it might have happened. They apologized. They sent me some free pickles. And it was just, such an overwhelming response that I think at that point, I went from being a consumer of Mount Olive pickles to being a fan of Mount Olive Pickle Company. And there's a big difference. You can buy stuff all through the years, but you really, you like the product, but you never think about the company. And it's when things go wrong that the character of a company is exposed. And, this to me shows that Mount Olive Pickle Company is a company that cares about their consumers, their customers, and they care about the product they put out. And, I was just so proud that they're a North Carolina company. I wanted to be able to bring them to you. And Peyton allowed me to bring them for her program. And so I'll let Peyton introduce Lynn.
So Wayne. Me and Wayne tell that story differently because I needed a program and he saved the day. So I appreciate it, Wayne. Tommy, congratulations. You have philanthropic goals with that money. I don't know what I'm talking about. That's right. I'm Lynn. Lynn is the public relations manager for Mount Olive Pickle Company, and she also serves as the assistant corporate secretary. At Mount Olive, Lynn oversees the company's relationships with the media, consumers, and shareholders, as well as special events. She represents Mount Olive in the community at large and helps manage the company's charitable giving. So she wants a meeting too. Her current community roles include chairman of the North Carolina Pickle Festival, member of the Pickles, Pigs, and Swigs Parade, a trustee for the Wayne County Library Foundation, and clerk of the session at Mount Olive Presbyterian Church. So she's a native of Mount Olive. She earned her degree in English and Communications from Campbell University. And she and her husband, Michael, have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. So Lynn, I will hand it over to you.
Well, awesome. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Okay. I have to say, this is an adventure with you all. I talk to Rotary clubs frequently, and frankly, I had forgotten how Wayne connected with us to ask for this, for me to be able to present to your Rotary Club. And I just figured he had been at a different Rotary meeting somewhere and saw me talk. So Wayne, that's actually probably one of the best introductions I have ever received. So thank you so much for that. And just this whole, to be able to zoom in to a meeting and to present to you all and talk about pickles, which is my favorite subject, except for my grandchildren, but we'll talk. It's really amazing. And about 5-10 minutes after we originally set up, my computer went dark. So you do not see the 2 IT folks who were here just a second ago, and they just slipped out the door, but they were Johnny on the spot and get me all set back up again. So they teased me for being uniquely capable of coming up with all kinds of weird stuff that they'd never seen before. So anyway, but it is such a pleasure to be here today. And I do thank you. And I hope I see pickles on the table. So I hope you guys can enjoy those. And yeah. Well, I'm going to open my screen or share my screen to my PowerPoint, and we'll talk some pickles for the next few minutes. Here we go. Okay. Let's see now. Let me make sure I can go to my next. How do I get to my next? There we go. How we started. This is some of my favorite. This is Mount Olive is a wonderful story. So the real short version of how we got started. Mount Olive, we are a long ways from Thomasville. We're in the eastern part of North Carolina. We are halfway between Raleigh and the beach. And that's how a lot of folks know where we are, because they kind of pass by on their way to the beach. But we are in a large agricultural area here in eastern North Carolina. Back in the early 1900s, we have a number of large produce markets that operated here, and local farmers would bring their crops to town and sell it to some of the produce brokers, and it would ship up to markets up north by train. But there were bumper crops of cucumbers that were going to waste. Cucumbers grow well here, but there just wasn't a market for them. So some fellas, a fellow from Goldsboro, he was a Lebanese immigrant and an entrepreneur. He saw all those cucumbers going to waste, thought there ought to be some way to do something about it. So he and a fellow who had some experience in the pickle business built a couple brine tanks on the south end of town, advertised for the cucumbers, and bought cucumbers, put them in the brine tanks, fermented them. And the idea was they would sell that brine stock, those fermented cucumbers, to other pickle companies. But that didn't quite work. But the business people in town realized that Shikri and George were on to something. And so they reasoned that if you could create a new market for farmers, that the whole town would benefit. So in 1926, a group of original investors in the company came together, and they established Mount Olive Pickle Company for the purpose of packing and selling its own brands of pickles. We had 37 shareholders that first year. It was an eclectic group. It was some prominent farmers. It was merchants, our local physicians, insurance brokers. Actually, it was the insurance agent who ran the company out of his office for the first 20 years or so, out of his office downtown. My favorite is the mechanic, 23 years old, who was living at home with his parents still. And he ponied up the cash, $100 for a share of the company. And I'm quite confident that his descendants have been very pleased with that decision. So yeah, so it was a group of people, and their intention was to do something that would benefit the community, which I think speaks a lot for our origins. They started with $19,000 in capital, an acre of land, and a 3,600 square foot building. And I think they would be pleasantly surprised at where we are today. We are the #1 brand of pickles and peppers and relishes in the country, with about a 30% market share. So we're still privately held mostly by the descendants of those original shareholders. We have about 479 at the moment. We're working to make sure we remain under 500 so that we don't have to register with the SEC. But that's where we are today. So today, let's see, here we go. We'll talk a little bit on 3 points. Sort of the impact of the COVID pandemic on our operations, our inflationary realities, kind of where we came through from 21 and 22, and kind of standing on the other side, sort of, today. So, you know, when the pandemic hit in March, we, at that time, 40% of all Americans ate, 40% of all the meals eaten by Americans were eaten outside of the home. So think about that for a minute. 40% of all the meals eaten in the United States were eaten outside of the home. And come the middle of March, everybody is at home. So that created significant impact on our company in terms of just our operations, the growth in our category that provided, the impact on our employees, and the need for some increased capacity here at our manufacturing facilities in Mount Olive. So, so brand share, we talk a little bit about that. We are 30.7%. We're still about that same level. These numbers came from back in the summer, but we're still right there at 30%, more than a little over 30% share of the market, which is astounding. In 2019, before the pandemic, our sales were about 26.9% of the category. And now we're well over 30. So it's been a tremendous story for us. We produced our cases produced. You can see the increase that we've done since before the pandemic to current. We dropped in terms of cases a little in fiscal year 2022, but it's still amazing what we've done in the past couple of years. And our employees, we now have right at 1,100 employees. We have an annual payroll, as you'll see, of right at 60 million. Our hourly rate is our minimum now is $13.52. We anticipate that will go up again by the first of our fiscal year in May. Before the pandemic, our starting range was like $8 and some. So it's just, we've gone from a seasonal employer as well for years and years, well, up until 2020. We would always tell you that we had about 600 employees year round, and then we hired another 350 in our busy summer green season. And we actually, during the past 3 years, we've converted from a seasonal operation to about essentially 1,200 employees year round, full time. So it's been a tremendous impact on our just our sort of our rhythms. We always had our green season. We kind of worked like our hair was on fire for about 6, 8, 12 weeks. And then we sort of slowed back down again. And now we're pretty much, green season is 6 months out of the year. And we're getting ready to get geared up for a new green season, the beginning of April. And so we'll see our, we're looking to hire more people. So if you know anybody who wants to help us pack pickles, please send them our way. This is our growth of employees, and you can kind of just over time, we were a little higher in 22 of last summer of 1,242. We hope to be back closer to the 1,200 number. And you can see kind of the decline in our seasonal employment over that period of time as well. Our annual payroll, where we've started from and where we've grown. We were about 40 million in fiscal year 2018, and now, and as of last year, fiscal last year, we were right at 60. That's pretty big numbers. So before the pandemic, we were in a growth mode prior to the pandemic already. We've spent about $110 million in our facilities down here in Mount Olive, and we've added production capacity at our distribution facility. We added essentially three production lines. We've bought every empty warehouse in Mount Olive, and they're all full of every empty manufacturing facilities in Mount Olive. They're all full of pickles. In fact, we have this habit of when we buy new facilities, we just refer to them as what their old names were. We don't rename them out of habit. So we still have the Wilco building, the Impulse building, and the Hilex Poly. Those are all former manufacturing facilities. And so we have a good laugh about that. But today we're sitting at 185 acres and over 1.3 million square feet of manufacturing and warehouse space here in Mount Olive. So that's where we were sitting just prior to the pandemic. So then we get into the pandemic. We were already stressed for space. And so in 21, we began to look for additional space for not only for warehousing, but for manufacturing. So we purchased 2 facilities in Goldsboro, and there you go. There's Cheney Brothers, which was a distribution center, and our Park East Industrial Complex here in nearby Goldsboro, and then another SPX Flow facility, which we are converting into production and warehouse capacity that we hope to be opening the first production line there in June of this year. SPX Flow was a $25 million initial investment for the first production line and the infrastructure improvements. And the actual cost will be closer now to 36 million. That's how much inflation has changed and impacted our plans for that facility. So once we got through the initial shock of operating in the middle of a pandemic in 2020, by the time 21 rolled around, we were seeing all kinds of supply chain pressures. Every week it was a new challenge, I'll say politely. One week it was our vinegar supplier saying that they couldn't supply us what we thought we were going to be receiving. The next week it was pallets. We normally get maybe 14 loads of pallets in a week's time to keep our operations going, and they tell us on a Sunday night that they're only going to send us 7 that week. So every week it was something different, and our folks were scrambling to make sure that we had what we needed to keep operating into 21 and into 22 initially. We also, we saw all kinds of increases in our materials and supplies. So it would be, we saw significant cost increases within our supply chain. We also, spare parts for our equipment would take anywhere from, where once it took a few days or maybe a week or 2, it was taking months to get. So we began a series of price increases in the marketplace to cover our increased costs of operating starting in 2021. And we've been able to stay ahead of inflation within our operations in terms of, making sure we've covered our cost. And then what we've seen since, which is really where we stand now, 23, is that is kind of figuring out what would happen in the marketplace once we did raise our prices. We knew that our sales would slow. We knew that consumers would likely shift to less expensive private label brands, but we really had no idea what kind of impact that would be. And what we have seen over the last several months is that consumers are still buying Mount Olive. They're just not buying as much. And while our sales have slowed some, which we expected, the Mount Olive brand is still essentially outperforming the pickles, peppers, and relishes category where we reside. So we've done well coming out of the pandemic. And I don't like about you guys, but I never ever want to have to go through that again. It was quite the experience and quite the challenge. as we were coming through that. So one of the things we were able to do through the pandemic is still to continue to introduce new items. And you'll see the pickle juicers, pickle juice. That was the one thing that a new item that we actually launched in the middle of the pandemic, and then in 2020. So it was mostly available. The 64-ounce gallon jugs you could find on Amazon, and you could order directly from us on our website. But the little 2-ounce bottles you could find in places like Publix and Food Lion, and I think maybe some Walmart. But that is we've done really well. We're getting ready to expand the 64-ounce jug. It's amazing what people use pickle juice for. Yeah, consumers for years have been contacting us and saying, I drink the juice, but the pickles dry out. So can I just buy the juice? And it took us a while to finally come around. But that's been a good item, a fun item for us. You see, we've launched some new sweet heat, which is and smoky barbecue bread and butter chips. They're probably among our most recent. And then a line of Italian seasoned peppers, which has been a lot of fun. So even during the pandemic, throughout this past couple of years, we've been working on new items. That's been part of our hallmark over many years, is our ability to innovate and always have something new and fun in the category that we want to introduce. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek on the latest greatest that'll be coming out sometime over in the fall. And it's going to actually be a whole new brand of Majestic Picklery. And it's kind of the idea of a top shelf, kind of a play on distilleries and top shelf whiskeys and products. And so we're going to be the top shelf pickle in the category. So it's a premium brand with unique flavors and combinations. And beyond pickles, we think we've tested some fabulous Italian seasoned mushrooms and some spicy and sweet okra. So we have a lot of opportunity to do some things with this brand that really aren't very practical for our core Mount Olive brand. We also have some hot sauces and a barbecue sauce that's pepper based there's be room for in this brand. So we're really excited about it, and you can say that you saw it first here at the Thomasville Rotary Club. I'll talk a little bit about some of our fun things that we do. I have the most fun job at Mount Olive Pickle Company. I've been doing pickle PR at Mount Olive for almost 24 years now. So, and it's just a lot of fun. We have a good time. Our roots are connected and beginnings are connected to our community. It was our community that organized the company. And so we have a huge obligation and awareness of making sure we give back to our community. And so you'll see our community contributions, which include our company corporate gifts, our employees community fund, which we've had since 1959. And employees sign up and volunteer to donate 30 cents out of every $100 of their wages, and the company matches that. And then we have an employee committee that represents the fund, and they make determinations of allocations every year. This past year, it's over 50 local, regional, and national organizations, and it's about approaching $150,000 a year that we do just on the employees community fund. And then we have a private foundation as well that we do for larger gifts. These numbers also include Food Bank and our relationship. We've had a relationship with Food Bank since that was organized in 1980. I was talking with the founding executive director several years ago in an event. She's since retired, but she looked at me and she says, when we started, we had sweet potatoes and Mount Olive pickles. So I thought that was a pretty good place to start. So that's a significant part of what we do with them as well. And the University of Mount Olive, which is based here, it's a private liberal arts college that's run by the Free Will Baptist denomination. And that is a wonderful, wonderful amenity to have here in Mount Olive, to have a thriving liberal arts university here in our little town. It's great to have the students here and the athletics. We were at a baseball game over the weekend, and the cultural activities that they provide. And the students themselves just bring so much energy and excitement to our community. So it's great. And then the other part of things that I do co-chair the North Carolina Pickle Festival. It's coming up the last full weekend of April this year. Last year was the first year that we had a live event since 2019. And we knew we were going to have a big crowd. We thought we were going to have a big crowd just based on our social media. We just simply announced that we were coming back, and we announced our theme for the year and our social media. We had over 1 million impressions just on that one post. And we would look, I co-chair it with Julie Beck, who's the Mount Olive Chamber chairman. And we looked at one another and went, oh my. We actually had 2.5 million social media impressions in April alone, and throughout the year we were hitting 5. We had more people in downtown Mount Olive than has ever stepped foot in Mount Olive at one time. We think we were in the neighborhood of about 60,000 people. We anticipated more people, and we planned for more people, but we just didn't plan for that many more people. And so we learned a lot. This was we're working on our 37th annual edition of that for this year. And we're really excited about some of the things that we're working on. One of the things that happened last year that really surprised us was just the number of people that showed up in pickle costumes. They had all ordered all their wonky t-shirts off Amazon, and they had pickle hats and pickle costumes, and we had bridesmaids and their bachelorette weekend. So we had brides and bridesmaids all in matching shirts and t-shirts, and it was just phenomenal. So this year we're adding a costume contest. And we'll see how that goes. But we do have our pickle eating contest, which is probably our signature event for the day. And so that's just a ton of fun. We launched a new event 2 years ago in the fall in downtown Mount Olive. Those proceeds from that benefit our downtown Mount Olive Development Corporation. It's called Pickles, Pigs, and Swigs. And of course, you got the pickles figured out. The pigs, we do a whole hog barbecue cook-off. And the Swigs is our R&R brewing here in Mount Olive. And yes, they do produce a Mount Olive pickle-based pickle beer. It's called Pickletown Lager. So, so that and then on for December 31st on New Year's Eve, we do have our New Year's Eve pickle drop, and that is a tradition. We're on our 23rd year for 23. We did not do one last year. We actually had to cancel at the last minute just because of some weather issues that we were having. But yeah, we drop a glowing pickle into a giant pickle jar at the stroke of 7 o'clock midnight. And at midnight, at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, it is midnight Greenwich Mean Time, which kind of makes it official. We sing Old Lang Syne, shout Happy New Year, do fireworks, and we are done by 7:30, and we are home in bed long before midnight. So if you get a chance, you actually can. We do broadcast the New Year's Eve Pickle Drop live on our on website, which we have been doing for years before it was ever a cool thing to do before COVID. So if you can't make it down to Mount Olive for the Pickle Drop, you can certainly tune in. Just make sure you tune in early, because if you tune in at midnight, you'll have missed the whole thing. So questions?
Wayne has a microphone. If you do have a question, I know what time it is. We're a little bit over time, but if you've got a really good question for Lynn, anybody? Cameron does. Here comes one for you, Lynn.
All right.
Wondering your economic impact of Mount Olive Pickles and Mount Olive and the population of your town. How many folks work for Mount Olive Pickles, things like that?
So Mount Olive we have about 4,500 people who are residents of Mount Olive. We actually our employment base really comes from as much as a 50-mile radius from here. And with 1,200 employees, it's sort of we have generations of families who have worked here at Mount Olive Pickle Company, literally. And everybody's kin to everybody else. So if you live in Mount Olive, you either know somebody who works at Mount Olive or you're kin to them. And so it's really sort of the going thing that you don't ever talk about anybody at Mount Olive because you just don't know who they might be kin to.
Then I was asked to ask you, how did Mount Olive town get its name?
Oh, so the town came first. Mount Olive, the town, was established as a railroad depot and post office in the 1850s, and they laid out the town. One of the founders who owned some of the property that created the town, he was the son of a Baptist minister. His name was Benjamin Oliver. And the thought was that the suggestion was they named the station as Oliver Station, and for him, and he was much more modest than that. And as the son of a Baptist minister, somehow the conversation kind of came up that, well, let's just call it Mount Olive. So we think we're named for the biblical Mount of Olives, but as the town. And then, of course, when the company came in the 1920s, it just became the Mount Olive Pickle Company. But the unique thing about that is just most people think Mount Olive is in the mountains, right? Well, we're down east. There's not any hills, much less a mountain. So there are no mounts in Mount Olive or olives either, just pickles.
Good one.
You got the chamber wants to know if you have any warehouse space in Thomasville. You hear that, Lynn?
No, say it again.
Our president of the Chamber of Commerce wants to know if you guys need any warehouse space in Thomasville.
Well, the rate we're going, you just never know.
All right. Well, his name's Keith Tobin. If you'd like to call him at the Thomasville Area Chamber of Commerce, you can do that. Well, thank you, Lynn. We greatly appreciate you.
You're welcome. This was an experiment, so thank you.
And we appreciate the Pickler sampler that you guys provided. And we're going to auction that off right now, and those proceeds are going to go to Cooperative Community Ministries.
Awesome.
And so this is the real deal, y'all. So whatever you want. Thanks, man. Let's see. There's 6 different jars here. There's I think some relishes, etc. I didn't see the sweet heat named after Joseph Walker. But anyway, open it up at $20. Oh, we got 20. Well, we got 25, 30. 30. Do we have 40? Going to 40. We got 40. We have 50. 50. You got 50, Brad. 55. We got 55. We got 55 with the mayor. 60. Anybody got 60? 55 for Mayor York. 60. Going once, going twice. It's short, Mayor York. 55.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you again, man. If you guys will stand with me for the tournament, I'm not going to pull the four-way test back up on the screen. It's over here, but most of you know about part by now. Go enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Until we meet again, all the things we think, say, or do, may we first ask ourselves, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill or better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Y'all have a good day. And remember to buy me my own pickles.